Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the wonderful Scott Simmons. Scott is a business development coach and trainer for lawyers. He is a business development consultant, was previously the National Senior Business Development Manager at DWF. He has a wealth of experience as a solicitor, and nowadays he is known as a toolbox for turning lawyers into rainmakers. As the creator of Precision, selling methodology, which we'll learn more about later, Scott's mission is to enable lawyers to learn in a simple and systematic formula. So, a very big warm welcome, Scott.
Hi there, Rob. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be chatting.
I'm really excited to be having you on the show. And before we dive into all your amazing projects, experiences, and ideas, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law if you've seen it?
So, Rob, I've watched 15 minutes of Suits and then I stopped watching it. So I could not give you an answer to that. I stopped watching it because in that first 15 minutes I sat there and I thought, well, this isn't going to do anything to help how people think about lawyers. So I just switched it right off and I have never gone back.
With that, I think you can give it a resounding 0 and we can move swiftly on to talk all about you. So, Scott, would you mind starting by telling our listeners about your background and career journey?
Okay, so I'm an ex-lawyer. I started off in a small high street law firm in Essex in the south of the UK. I started off in residential conveyancing, and for US listeners, that's real estate. And I had a head of department and mentor when I started who drummed into me, Rob, the importance of the customer service, the customer experience, how important clients were. And that really stuck with me. He put me in front of clients and everything was about giving them an exceptional experience. The problem was, Rob, was that what we could see was at the end of the month, in order to hit financial targets, we were having to do so many completions, and that was impacting the service that we were trying to create. The other impact that it was having was that actually my boss was ill with stress-related stomach problems, and he was out of the office on average sort of 2 days a week. So there was a lot of firefighting going on. And I realised I was in my early 20s, so, you could throw as much work at me as you wanted. And I was happy to, very, very few responsibilities. But I could see that something needed to change, because what was happening was that we were getting inquiries. And if they tell us the value of the property, we would give them a price from our menu sheet. If somebody, Rob, waited half a second without going, yes, please, we'd go, but if you come with us today, we'll drop it down to this price. So we had this real problem of being in this race to the bottom. And God help us if we found out that someone down the road had dropped their prices, because then we were like, anyway, so I could see that there was a problem about 6 months in, and I took an idea to my boss and I said, this is what I think we should do. I think we should cut out the bottom end of the market. I think we should massively increase our prices, and we should explain to people that what we want to do is work with people who want this exceptional service and want their lawyer to have the time and space to be able to take them through the process and guide them on what was going on. He loved it. He put me in front of the partnership. The partnership agreed to it. And within 12 months, everything had changed. And we went from having, client complaints dropped through the floor, client, experience and feedback and testimonials went through the roof. Our reputation had grown from being really, really local to being really quite regional.
Yeah.
So sort of one side of Essex, the other side of London, up to Hertfordshire, down to Brighton. We really covered a lot of the south. We were getting inquiries from places we could not believe. And the team was growing and we were doing more fees. We were doing more fees, Rob, than we'd ever done, doing 50% less work. But the key one for me was that my boss was no longer ill.
Yeah.
He was not taking off that kind of time that he had previously. And that always stuck with me, that race to the bottom almost became like, without realizing it, an unconscious sort of choice that the profession was finding itself in, but we could do something about it. So I went through my career and I moved firms. I went to bigger and bigger firms. I moved into commercial property, into corporate support. I went into trust and company management, and I finished off in corporate, and I didn't enjoy that at all. And in fact, to the point where it made me ill. And I suffered quite bad burnout. And you won't be surprised to know that I blame an awful, aside from the lack of support that I got, I blame a fair bit of it on the billable hour. But that's not going to be a surprise to you. But I left the practice of law, and I got a lot of inquiries and a lot of requests to just focus in on business development, to help businesses get footprints into the UK. So that's how we created Legal Balance. It was to service that kind of growing need for businesses to have that footprint and into the UK market for business development. But I didn't stop at just working for law firms. I worked across professional services because I wanted to understand what other professional services industries were doing around business development, customer experience, customer service. And eventually what happened was that I could see that there was an opportunity for lawyers to really get involved in the selling process. But in order to do that, I was going to, we were going to have to teach them how to sell, and we were going to have to overcome this mindset problem of I'm a lawyer, I don't sell, or I've got too much on, I can't do the BD. And that's how we developed the BD Breakthrough Blueprint, which is our education course on business development. And then eventually how we turned that into a digital course, which kind of brings us to where we are today.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating journey. And I guess, just understanding your career route, you've always sort of had business development in your DNA, shall we say, sort of either consciously or subconsciously, just learning through that. But let's just break it down, because it's an interesting question. What is Scott's definition of business development? Because you're a business development coach and trainer for lawyers. You've got sort of that legal business development coach badge, consultant badge. What is your definition of business development?
Okay, so the absolute best definition I've ever heard is actually it came from my my wife, who is the CEO of Legal Balance and really is the brains behind the company. I might appear to be the face, but really and truly, all the best ideas you've ever seen me come up with come from her. And she explained it like this. She said, marketing is drawing the horse to water. Business development is making it drink. That to me is the absolute best definition of the difference between marketing and BD, but really helps you understand what both marketing and business development are. So marketing is that building that brand, getting that awareness out into the world. And then business development is creating those opportunities, those bringing people into a place where you're not just kind of out there on a big scale. You've then drawn real prospects and leads into your funnel, and you're now having those conversations one-to-one or one to small groups. And business development is turning those prospects into clients.
I love that. And it's, I always say, if you can't explain something simply, how on earth are you going to get people to understand it? I don't think you could have done a better simplification there for everyone to digest and understand. So let's keep you on that momentum, Scott. Let's talk about differences. How do you describe the differences? Because people see consultancy, they see training, they see coaching. How do you differentiate the three and just give people some practical examples, particularly related to the legal profession?
Okay, so obviously you mentioned at the beginning, when I describe myself, I talk about being a toolbox for turning lawyers into rainmakers. Okay, yep. I don't tell people I'm a consultant, trainer, and coach. I use it in my elevator pitch when I go on to explain it. But I describe myself as a toolbox for turning lawyers into rainmakers. And how I do that is that I give lawyers the tips, tools, and techniques to get out into the marketplace, give clients best advice and win more work. And then I talk about how I, coach clients on subjects around mindset, leadership, culture, habits. And then I give them training on how to sell and cross-sell, how to give compelling presentations that make other lawyers jealous, and how to network with confidence and purpose. Okay, so we've got the coaching, we've got the training elements, and by the way, I think that the coaching and training together are really, really important, because one of the fundamental problems around training, and this is part of why we turn the course into a digital course, is that people come away from training sessions and they feel really great about it. I feel like I've learned so much, and I can take all of this on, and then you get back to your desk, you start doing the work, and everything you've learned just kind of falls away.
Yep.
Because you've got nothing there to keep you motivated, to keep you accountable, to make sure that you are doing what you want to be doing. And so coaching, I think, is really, really valuable, because particularly alongside the training, what it enables you to do is just to keep people on the right track. Now, the consultancy side is when we work with the C-suite, when we work with the directors and the C-suite, the kind of fundamental decision makers in the business, to help them build firm business-wide strategic business development strategies. Because you can have individual strategies about how you're going to reach out to businesses or clients or prospects and things like that, but the business needs an overarching business development strategy.
Yeah.
So that everyone's working towards the same goal. And if you, as an individual lawyer, have a business development strategy, but your business doesn't have a business development strategy, it's going to be a bit more difficult for you to get the buy-in at the top and the support at the top. So having it work down like that is really massive. It's massively important.
Yeah, and again, I love how you sort of break it down and, take everyone through that journey, because I absolutely agree. I remember back to when I first started my recruitment journey, we'd go on all of these training courses and you'll just come out and you're like, wow, I'm going to use these new techniques, this, that, and the other. And then, like you say, without that sort of ongoing coaching, support, implementation, and, what gets measured, get done, all of that good stuff, it does sort of filter away. So let's give people some practical and tactical advice then. I really love your sort of acronym. Talk us through precision, because you created this. It's a selling methodology. Can you explain what it is and why it's so valuable?
Right. So when I stopped practicing law and I was then going to be doing sales full time for law firms and other professional services firms, I almost had to think about what I had been doing that had made me really successful at winning work as a lawyer. And I had to go back to square one, because I was all of a sudden just kind of not remembering what had got me to where I had got to. And I really started looking back at what were the things that made me just really good at winning the work. And the first thing was, I remember saying to my wife, I said, the thing I think that really makes me good at this is that I'm just really nosy. Yeah. I just like to ask questions, and I like to find out what's going on. But I do it from a place of kind of genuine curiosity. I want to understand people better. I want to know kind of what's going on, but I don't just do it to make conversation. I'm genuinely involved and engaged in that conversation. I love it when somebody tells me something about their business or their life or something like that, and you're just learning all the time. So I knew it kind of started with genuine curiosity. I knew that meant asking kind of really engaging and involved questions, because you want people to open up. People love talking about themselves. So I wanted to ask questions that would get people to open up to me. It became this sort of thing of, well, if I'm going to ask the questions, I need to really hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
And as I started going through this process, I realized that those were the big keys. That was what was going to make the difference. But then I had to think about, well, how was I actually getting in front of both existing clients and and prospects who didn't know who I was, didn't know who the business that I was working with was. Okay, so then I had to come back further, and I was thinking about, okay, well, what's the research that I'm doing? How am I reaching out to them? And then that started to fall into place. But then two things came about that really that had a big impact. One of them was that I read a book called the Challenger Sale, and I learned that actually everything that we've been taught in our professional lives about how relationship building wins you more work was just completely turned on its head. It had absolutely nothing. People don't want to work with someone they don't like, but if you can have an impact on their thinking, if you can make them, if you can get them to think completely differently and act upon that, that makes you a really compelling prospect to work with. And that was one of them. The other thing was that I realized if I wanted to get my foot through the door, I had to be able to talk about the value that we create for our clients and our prospects. And that meant going back and thinking about what it is that made me, the business that I was working for, whoever, completely different. So I had to undergo sort of like a process of what's my value proposition? What's the business's value proposition? When I started looking at all of this together, I started to see, value proposition, doing the research, how I was going to reach out, the value I was going to bring, the questions I was going to ask. And I started to write out what each of those things, the titles for each of them. Now, sort of my wife and I, we love a good acronym. And when we started to write them down, we said, okay, well, how could we turn those into something, just quick and easy for someone to remember? And, so the first one became pitch, articulating your value proposition. Then it became research, and then encounter. And we just kept going. And we found that we'd created the word precision. And every single step in precision counts for another, every single letter counts for another step in the process that you go through to understand who you want to be working with, the value that you can bring to them, the way that you can reach out to them, the questions that you would ask, the objections that you're likely to hear, how you would go about asking for the work or not, and how you would create a culture of business development within your business. And that's how that 9-step process of precision came about.
I love it. And it's so good. And I always say, practical and tactical advice is so, so important, because there's a lot of things out there that are, what I call quite woolly. But like you say, when you actually break it down and there's a process and there's a methodology and it's proven and it works, people can really relate to that. And then, like you said, back when you're talking on the training and the coaching, if you give people the manual and it's easy to understand and they can practice it and get better and better and better and better, eventually they're going to get to where they need to get to. So let's talk more about this toolbox for turning lawyers into rainmakers. What skills do you think are absolutely required to become a rainmaker? And for people who might be less familiar, how do you define what a rainmaker is?
Okay, so Rainmaker, firstly, let's sort of work backwards. So Rainmaker, think of it visually. Okay, it's somebody who makes it rain.
Yeah.
Okay, so that visual, now think about making it rain work. Okay, you're making it rain down work on yourself, but also you're making it rain work for other people. And that's really key. The methodology that we work on with precision isn't about being closed off just within your practice area and your own potential opportunities. When you go through precision, if you want to be a rainmaker, you are a trusted advisor, and trusted advisors, they look at people's or businesses' wider goals and needs. So there are often opportunities whereby you might reach out to 20 clients, and if all you're focused on is just the law, the legal practice area that you work in. None of those 20, or only one of those 20, might actually need your help there and then.
Yeah.
But everybody, from birth to death, needs a lawyer throughout their entire life. And if you're a business owner, getting the law wrong is the one thing, Rob, you cannot get wrong.
No.
You can't get the law wrong. It is catastrophic if you do. And so getting legal advice right from the beginning, when you set up a business, all the way through, you need legal advice. But it's different types of legal advice. It is different types, and it may not be your practice area, but it might be your colleagues in a different practice area. It might be an intermediary that you know. So it might not be law, it might be wealth management, it might be banking, it might be, accounting. It could be so many other things. But the key is that because you have taken the time to get to know your clients, you're thinking in terms of, okay, well, what are their wider goals and needs? If I can help them with those opportunities or to solve some of those problems, they'll start to think of me as somebody that they trust to come to. And when the time comes that they do need legal advice, they'll come to me and they won't go anywhere else because they know that I get them better outcomes. That fundamentally is what it means to be a rainmaker. Now, in terms of sort of the key skills, firstly, as I said before, it's that curiosity. It starts actually with wanting to help.
Yeah.
Okay. Most lawyers, they get into the profession because they want to help people. Okay, there's things along the way that sometimes make that difficult. But fundamentally, so many of us get into this profession because we want to help people. If you can remember that and you can go into every single conversation saying, I really want to help this client, or I really want to be able to help this prospect, then everything else will follow. So it's that curiosity, it's that desire to help. It's asking those questions that tease out the information that you're going to need in order to help. All of those things follow from that one point of, I want to help.
Yeah.
If you can start there. Now, the interesting thing is that lawyers have a problem around mindset. Okay, we're trained into this very narrow way of thinking. And what that does is that it stops us from believing that we can do anything else other than the work that's put on our desk. When you learn when you learn awareness around your mindset and you learn and understand, hey, it took you years and it's continuous learning and development. You didn't just wake up one morning a skilled lawyer. You had to spend years and years, university, college, law school, all of these things. And then that was just the beginning. Then it was learning on the job. Then it was CPD and you're constantly learning. But we forget that because we are trained into this very narrow way of thinking. When you go back and think to yourself, actually, I had to work really hard for that. If I can learn to do that, I can learn to do anything. You open yourself up to the realization that you can learn business development skills. They are not the most complicated skills that you're going to learn in life.
Yeah. And I love that. And I remember one of my mentors said to me, he said, if you drop the L, what does it spell? Earn. And the reality is, to earn, you need to learn. It's so true. And, it's a great example there that you talk about the BD footprint, which I want to talk about in a minute. But it's so important that people get curious. Like, you want to help, you come from a place of service, because I always say sales is serving. And, you're coming from a place of being super curious, super wanting to understand and then really serve, because I think there is that kind of mindset of sales, the dirty word, etc., etc., etc. So
100%.
Can we talk briefly about, because you touched on it, and I alluded to there, the BD Breakthrough Blueprint, because I think it's brilliant, 2-day Kickstarter course. What does it involve, and what do you hope for people to gain from the course, and who's it primarily aimed at?
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. So the BD Breakthrough Blueprint for a number of years was our 2-day, and still is, by the way, our 2-day training course.
Yep.
And what it does is it teaches you precision selling, really takes you through those steps that you're going to go through. And two of the things that really scare lawyers is this idea that people are going to say, oh, price, that the price you've given me is a bit of a problem, or, oh, I'm not ready to go ahead, or, you know, one of the other things, you know, I'm not sure that you're the right one for us, all of those objections. And we cover the most common objections that you'll hear and how you can handle them. We also sort of go into a bit of negotiation. We don't do anything at this really complex level, because ultimately, firstly, all of these things are quite straightforward. You can develop all of these skills to a really complex level. You can go on to learn neuro-linguistic programming and special skills around negotiating. But fundamentally, you don't need them to get people to work with you, to you know, when it comes to the law. So again, come back to these things about keeping it really, really straightforward and simple, so that people can go away and start using them from day one. Okay, so you've got precision. As I said earlier on, we talk about presentation skills, giving those really compelling presentations, showing passion, telling stories, all of these different things that you can use to take your presentation skills to the next level. We talk about networking, what we call nimble networking. You know, lawyers tend to be thrown into doing networking and come out of there. And the number of times I speak to particularly young lawyers and they say to me, Scott, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And it's because you're not given a plan. You're not given a strategy of how to go into a networking event. And actually, once you have just a few little tips and things to do when you go to these networking events, it's actually really simple. Again, we're just breaking down these myths. We're demystifying these subjects and making them really, really simple so you can go away and do it straight away. We talk about CRM. Okay, CRM is your best friend when it comes to business development.
Yeah.
And we talk about CRM from the perspective of why. Why is CRM important? And no one really discusses that. And we talk about that in the course. And then the foundation of it all, as I said before, is mindset. You can do all of this. You can give all of the selling tips that you want. You can teach lawyers how to sell all day long. If they don't believe that they can learn this stuff and they don't believe that they can implement it, they'll never do anything with it. And so for us, having mindset as the foundation stone, as the first point that you build from, was fundamental to us, and that's really important. And you can see it in people. You can see it in people when you start to have the conversation around how your mindset impacts your results and outcomes. You can see that people, just that little light switch that goes off. And then when you start talking to them about anything to do with business development, they're like, actually, I can do this. Actually, this doesn't take much for me. And in a lot of cases, Rob, you're doing it already. You just weren't really aware of it. And what this teaches you is that awareness. And then we talked about training and going away from it and falling back into old habits. That's part of the reason why we turned the BD Breakthrough Blueprint into a digital course. We know that there's a growing desire for people to learn at their own pace.
Yeah.
But being there for 2 days on a training course doesn't fit everybody's, routine agenda, how they like to learn. We wanted to give people these these things that they could learn at their own pace. But more importantly, they can go back to it whenever they want. Once you've bought it, you own it.
Yeah.
So unlike with other training courses, you can come back to this whenever you want and you can compare it with what you're doing and just reinforce those. And so turning it into a digital course has been massively important. And I mean, God, I'm so incredibly proud of it. The feedback that we're getting is amazing. But it's just that fact that people can keep going back to it and test themselves against what they've learned, which has been incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, and like you say, you're not always someone like me on certain things. I don't always get it first time around. So actually having the opportunity to go back and sort of think, actually, oh, okay, maybe I needed to tweak that, or reading it over again or having access to it again does help. Time for a short break from the show. Are you trapped in a relationship with the wrong legal software provider? It's time to break free and switch to Clio. For a limited time, when you switch to Clio, you can get up to 6 months off a Clio subscription, a free data migration scoping call, and a £100 gift card for attending a demo. Clio is your cost-effective and flexible solution. Choose a plan that fits your needs and budget with no long-term commitments. Pricing starts from just £49 per user per month. Worried about the migration process? Don't be. Clio handles the migration of your existing data and ensures a smooth transition with zero downtime. Join the thousands of solicitors who trust Clio. Switch to Clio now and save. Visit clio.com/UK/break free to learn more. This is a limited time offer. Terms and conditions apply. Now back to the show. Let's talk about global differences, because we've got listeners all around the world listening, and you've worked with law firms across the world, including Cayman Islands, Gibraltar, Turkey, US, UK. What are some business development challenges lawyers in these different countries face, in your opinion, in comparison to, say, more traditionally the UK market?
Right. So that's a really interesting question. So fundamentally, because these skills are all communication skills.
Yeah.
And by the way, then I can't bear it when someone calls it a soft skill. When you think soft, you just soft and hard skills. You absolutely start thinking, well, that's not as important. I call them sort of fundamental, essential human skills, and so for me, they are as important as the technical technical work. So the skills themselves are fundamentally universal, and that's why we have clients, as you pointed out, everywhere from Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, South Africa, all across Europe, obviously the UK, the US, and up and down, the American continent. But there are some. Listen, there are cultural differences, so you might go about things slightly differently. In the US, which is incredibly strange to me, you can't cold call. They have a definition of cold calling, Rob, which has always made me laugh, which is you can cold call family, friends, and other and lawyers that you know. And I'm like, well, that's not cold calling. That is just about as warm or as hot as you're possibly going to get. Not cold calling. So you can't do that. And we refer to it because we have a very, very small, quick section on cold outreach in the course. We do not go into it, by the way, because when I have a conversation with a lawyer about cold calling, they go white. Right? Yeah. They go. I mean, I love cold calling and I love cold emailing. I love seeing what might work, what email might get through, what phone call might get through, what it is that causes somebody who doesn't know me to answer or pick up the phone. But in the US, they can't do it, and we refer to that fact in the course that this section may not work entirely. But even then, we're leaving that for another course. We've created the Legal Balance Institute, a website which we're going to be building more courses. So we're just in the process of building a value-based pricing training course, which will be out. I'm not sure when. It was such a mammoth effort getting the BD Breakthrough Blueprint recorded that I need some time off from recording. But yeah, so that's going to come later on. And what we want to do, as I've said, we want to ease people into this idea that they can do all of these things. And when you can ease people in, everything else is a much smaller jump up, is a much smaller learning curve for them. And so with those things, yes, there are cultural differences, there are certain legal differences, but fundamentally these skills are universal.
I love that. And it's so true, isn't it? Because I talk a lot and I sound like a broken record. We're not in this B2B, B2C world anymore. We're in this human to human, and we're all humans on the planet. So, as long as you can get the communication skills and, like you say, those fundamental skills nailed down, and you stay curious and everything you've mentioned, I think you stand a really high chance of being successful. And anybody can do this. I stand by what you say there. I'm going to quote you, Scott. the legal profession isn't taught how to win new clients. And it's one of the few that doesn't prepare its future leaders for those roles. So why do you think the legal profession lacks formal training on acquiring new clients compared to other industries?
That is such a great question. How long have we got? I will do my best. I will. No. I will keep it. I will. He says I'll keep it brief. Hasn't kept anything brief thus far. Right. We are taught to in law school and university. We are taught to do the work that is put in front of us.
Yeah.
No one at any point in our legal in our legal sort of life up until we get to partnership, no one tells us that law is a business.
Yeah.
And in order to have a business, you have not just a product or service to sell, you have to be able to sell it.
Yes.
And we're never, ever taught that. And so we go through our careers and we just go, okay, well, if I get the work that's put in front of me done, and I do more of it, and I do more of it, and I do more of it, I'll go from trainee to solicitor to associate, senior associate to director to partner, whatever it is, and I'll just keep rising depending on this arbitrary way that the firm has for promotion. And it's only when you get to that partnership conversation that the partner sit there and go, right, okay, Rob, we're going to make you a partner. What are you going to do to win work?
Yeah.
You sit there and you go, say what now? Yeah. You're a partner now. You've got to win work. And you go, well, I've never had to win work before. You've always given me the work. I figured that's just how it would always be. No. You're a partner now. You've got all of this extra responsibility. And it's really interesting because we without meaning to, we set people up for failure. We put them in positions of leadership without teaching them and training them on what it means to lead other people. We put people in these ever increasing, more leadership roles based on what they were doing previously, not what's going to be expected of them in the future. And when those people fail at those new roles, everyone turns around and go, oh, they just seemed like that they would get it. They got it before. Why didn't they get it? And it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same with winning work. Research was done years ago that showed that on average, it takes a lawyer from the moment they meet a prospective client to the moment that they become a client, it takes an average of 4 years.
Wow.
Now imagine as a brand new partner, as a junior partner, sitting in partners meetings for 4 years, having your senior partners go, Rob, why aren't you more consistent winning your work? Why aren't you more consistent? Now, when you do business development consistently, you can bring that down just so much. You can bring it down, the average down massively. But we have to train people, and we need to train them from the very beginning. From my perspective, it's a case of these skills should be part of what we're learning, as fundamental as the technical stuff, right from the outset. Add it into university, add it into law school, make it part of training, make it part of a lawyer's training contract, give them that space, give them that safe space to learn these things, to implement them and execute them, make it a safe space where they can make mistakes and build upon what they've learned. And we will transform the profession, Rob. We really will.
And you make such a great point about a safe space as well, because, lawyers are so scared of making a typo, let alone, a little mistake on something. So when it comes to business development, if you actually create that environment, encourage it and say, look, it's all part of the process, and rejection is part of, a lot of business development. Fortune is in the follow-up. You and I both agree that. And there's multiple ways, a no isn't always a no now, no never, is it? There's multiple ways to go around that. So look, this has been an absolute masterclass, Scott. I've loved it. I've just got a couple of quick questions before we wrap up. I want to talk about your landmark virtual event, because I think it's one of the best virtual events I've had the opportunity to attend in many years. I think the level of interaction, the level of content, the speakers you have, just everything from an experience from a virtual perspective, because a lot of people are still a little bit, you can't beat the in-person events, which of course, there is an argument for that. But I just want to give you a chance to talk about the legal iconoclast, because I think it's great. I've been a couple of times and really loved it. So tell us more.
Thank you so much. So yes, Legal Iconoclast, we developed that a couple of years ago around this idea that we wanted to give people a space where they could talk about the future of the profession. And what we could do is we could introduce, not necessarily like-minded, but like-minded people who actually had these almost forward-thinking ideas about where the profession was heading, that they could come together and talk about different subjects that were going to impact the legal profession. We called it Legal Iconoclast because we wanted those people who were going to be talking about and breaking down these old ways of working and seeing the profession. And we came up with this idea for a virtual event. And we wanted a space, a virtual event, where people could meet each other really, really easily, really, really simply. And we found a platform that actually looks like a virtual conference hall with tables. And you would click on a table and you'd go onto that table and other people would be on those tables and you'd start chatting with people that you'd never chatted before. And that kind of networking, we'd never seen anything sort of like that before. And it meant that people who had never met from all over the world, by the way, obviously you've been there, and it created the opportunity for people to build connections that they otherwise wouldn't have built and talk about subjects that weren't being talked about maybe by necessarily in the same way by other providers. And we've run a couple of them. We have plans for more, and we just love it. We absolutely love it because, like I say, it's bringing together people who are talking about and also running legal businesses very differently. So we were able to bring together sort of young lawyers who were at the beginning of the year and put them in touch with people who were running very different legal businesses and say to them, look, have a chat with this person, see what the options are out there. When I was a young lawyer, I didn't know beyond big law and sort of local firms what was out there, because the things like LinkedIn and other social media platforms weren't there when I started out in my career. This creates that opportunity for people to come together, and we really just kind of love it. So we've got plans for more. We've just got to sort of put them in place and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, and I can't wait. I think it's like I said, I think it's a great event. And you touched on there social media, LinkedIn. Obviously, we've touched on networking, personal brand. These are things we talk a lot about on the show, and they are very important when it comes to basically a lot of the discussion we've talked about today. But I guess if I was to pin you down before we wrap up, Scott, what would be your top 3 tips for those looking to enhance their business development skills?
Okay, top 3 tips. Number 1, and this is always the fundamental, just get started.
Yeah.
Okay, put 30 minutes into your calendar, and with if you really want to just dip your toe, put 30 minutes in once a week. Doesn't matter what's going on, you can find 30 minutes once a week to put into your calendar to just get started. Okay, with that 30 minutes a week, think about what you can achieve. That's 2 to 2.5 hours a month, 4 to 5 hours over 2 months. You just keep multiplying that, 6 to 7.5, 8 to, you just keep multiplying that and think about what you can achieve.
Yeah.
With 8 to 10 hours that you weren't doing previously. So that's number 1, just get started. Number 2 for me is your easiest wins are within your existing client base. Okay, everything that we teach you in the BD Breakthrough Blueprint, you can get started with your existing client base, because if you've got good relationships with your existing clients, then they will be more receptive to having conversations with you, and they'll be more interested in hearing what you have to offer them than cold prospects who have never heard of you before. So think about your existing, your current clients and reach out to them. The other thing that I think is massively important is realizing the value that you bring to the table. I can't sort of overstate what lawyers do transformative. We transform people's lives. There's nothing else out there that can absolutely sit there and say, yeah, transformed our lives the way that law does. But if we don't talk about it in those terms, no one else will.
Yeah.
And so what I always say to people is start to think about the ways in which you add and create value for people, the ways in which that you transform people's lives. And a lot of that comes down to that, P for pitch in the BD, in precision selling of BD Breakthrough Blueprint. That's what we uncover. We start to uncover people's value proposition. And that really takes you through that process of understanding just how transformative we are. We have to start talking much more positively about what we do.
Yeah.
When we can start talking much more positively, the narrative around lawyers will change. And that, for me, is really fundamental. Look around you. Look at the ways in which you and your colleagues change people's lives for the better. Once you start believing that, your confidence will go through the roof.
I'm so glad you said that, because self-confidence is so important. And I guess putting my legal recruiting hat on, if you're in that environment and you don't feel that anyone is sort of supporting you with that value, or you don't feel like you're getting that value, maybe you've outgrown that environment, or maybe that environment and that culture isn't right for you. Because I strongly believe everybody has a value, and I strongly believe you have to have the mindset. So if you're around the room and you're not feeling that, then maybe it's not the right room for you to be in. You need to take action to get there, because absolutely everything you just shared there, Scott, I can't believe, people say, what's this getting started? Like literally, like you say, just started, 1% gains every day compounds over a large amount of time, and you get transformative impact. So this has been a masterclass, as I knew it was going to be, Scott, start to finish. So if our listeners, which I'm sure they will, want to know more about your career journey, the BD Breakthrough Blueprint, legal balance, or indeed legal iconoclast potential future events, where can they go to find out more? Feel free to shout out any websites, any web links. We will also share them with this episode for you too.
Perfect. Thank you. So firstly, there's, Legal Balance website, legalbalance.co.uk. You'll find out bits and pieces of information. The Legal Balance Institute, Legal Balance Institute, .thinkific.com. That's where you'll find the BD Breakthrough Blueprint digital course. Go and have a look at that. You'll find, Rob, you'll find me every single day on LinkedIn. That is the platform that I love to be on. Yep, I dabble with other places. I need to get back onto platforms like Instagram and TikTok. I don't use them anywhere near enough. LinkedIn is my platform. I love being there. I love the conversations that are generated. So you'll find me there. Connect with me, follow me, whatever it is. Reach out. I love a conversation. So just reach out to me. I'm always happy to chat. Please, don't worry about it. Just come and say hi.
Absolutely. And that's what the platform is, LinkedIn. It's all about creating conversations. So definitely reach out to Scott. Scott, this has been an absolute pleasure hosting you. I love our collaborations we've done over the years, and just wishing you lots of continued success with your career and future pursuits. But from now, from all of us on the show, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.